Hello, educators of Virginia, and welcome back to your favorite podcast channel. I am here today. It's an absolute honor and a privilege to be sitting down with Peter DeWitt. He is a thought leader in our field and author of numerous books. And oh, by the way, he's going to be our conference opener, keynote speaker coming up at the end of this year at our annual conference. He's also graciously agreed to do one of our concurrent sessions. So he's not just going to talk to us and hit the road. He's going to stick around with us for the long haul. So without further ado, I'm going to do my thing and get out of the way so that you can hear who you came here to listen to. Peter, first of all, thank you. But second, welcome and how are you?
I'm doing well, Chris. Thank you. I think we get this backwards sometimes because you are the ones who ask me to speak and people are thanking me when it's the opposite. I'm actually the one thanking you for doing this. Maybe it's the Dual Admiration Society, but I'm always honored, and being able to come to Virginia in a few months is going to be really nice as well. So I'm excited to do the keynote, and I'm equally as excited to do the deeper dive.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Our audience has come to know that I don't let folks get off the hook with I'm doing okay, I'm fine, I'm well. They always know that I'm gonna ask how are you. So when I ask how you are, I really want to know. And in this moment, we're recording on July 5th. How are you?
It is hot. So that's one thing. I'm actually doing really well. I ran 10 miles this morning.
Wow.
Running about 50 miles a week. So I ran 10 miles this morning. I bought a big green egg grill. I started cooking 3 weeks ago after a weekend in Seattle with my friend Mike and his wife Britt, and they said, "Yeah, you're not going to get away with like not cooking." So I usually am not the cook in the family. And so I've been cooking every day for the past 3 weeks. I bought a big green egg grill. And right now, as we speak, I am smoking a brisket for the very first time. And there were some words there that I've never said before. Smoking a brisket.
Yes.
It's not something that you would see. So it's just been, honestly, it's been a really, I often feel one-dimensional, because people might know me as an educator and just the idea that, I have running and I'm making some gourmet meals actually, and we're inviting friends over, and I'm reading a book called Unreasonable Hospitality, which taps into both not just the professional side where I'm looking at how can I do extra and make people feel comfortable and get them, engage people in different ways. But it's also from a personal side, just doing the extra things that when we have guests over to the house, how can I make them feel even more welcome? Because when we get together with our friends and family, it should be a celebration. And I think sometimes we take that for granted. I had lost my mom and sister in the past couple of years. And one of the things that I've been navigating through is just how do you move forward and engage people and just celebrate life, because you never know when the last time is the last time. So how is that, Chris, for being really open and
Man.
honest about how I'm doing?
Man, I tell you what, Peter, there's a lot to unpack there. We could just have our podcast around
I
the
know.
fact that you just kind of like casually said, I ran 10 miles this morning, and it's hot there, it's hot here, it's hot everywhere I think we set 2 days in a row back to back
Wow.
worldwide records for heat. We set the record on Monday, and then on Tuesday it beat it again. But you
Yeah.
just casually like, I ran 10 miles this morning. I run 50 miles a week. And you casually like, I'm smoking a brisket. Like those are not easy things to do. So I so what so I'm gonna let's unpack both of those.
Yeah.
Like running 50 miles a week is not normal. Probably
Oh,
normal
it
for you,
is
but
if you're a runner.
the
Yeah.
for the rest of the population, and I don't know what percent of the population runs 50 miles a week, but it's not a lot.
Yeah.
How did you get into running?
So I was a long distance runner my last year of high school and all through college.
Okay.
And then I ran for a couple of years after, and then I injured myself. And every time I tried to get back into running, my calves would just pull, and I would just go back to, not running and doing the elliptical machine and those kind of things. And then I I actually, when I was on the road first, for the first couple of years, I was on the road running workshops and stuff. I got pretty heavy for what I was used to. I mean, I got to my heaviest weight ever. And I started trying to exercise and eat right and stuff, but on the road it's not always easy. And then when COVID hit, I found all this time to be home, and I was still trying to figure out, how do I know, just like everybody else, how do I move forward? What do I need to do? So at the same time, I was trying to look at virtual settings and those kind of things. I bought a road bike, and I would go visit my mom. My mom was at the time in her mid 80s. She still lived in the house my dad built back in 1959. So I would go up to upstate New York, Queensbury, New York, and I would ride the bike on the bike trail through the Adirondacks and stuff. And I started doing that. And then I bought a Peloton. And then 3 years later, I was just really into biking and doing yoga and meditation and everything else. And then I got to the point in January of this year where I actually said, you know what, I think I can get back into running, because I stretch and all those things you don't do when you're younger because you're a knucklehead. So I started running February 1st, and I ran a half marathon for the very first time. I ran a half marathon in Honolulu in April because I was going to be in Hawaii for work, and they just happened to have a half marathon the weekend I was going to be there. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to do the half marathon. And I went and I got 96 out of 8,000. And I was like, you know what? I think I can run again. And I'm about to turn 53 in January, or I mean, in September. I know when my birthday is. I promise I do. And 53 was actually the year that the age my dad was when he passed away. So there are a lot of those kind of things when I'm in my 50s that I used to look at people and just be like, I used to run like that and I'll never be able to do that again. And now I'm back to the point where I just started running and increasing my mileage. I still do a lot of biking, but I'm running about 50 miles a week, and I'm averaging a really good pace. And I have some half marathons that I'm scheduled for the fall. So yeah, it has been, honestly, from a well-being standpoint, running was always that thing back when I was younger, that it didn't matter how much money my parents made or any of that kind of stuff. It was just about me going out and being alone. Like, I know people listen to music and stuff. I will go out and just, even when I'm on a treadmill, if I have to run on a treadmill, I don't listen to music. I just want to be in my own head, and I want to think things out. And so that's what I do. And so, yeah, I got up, this morning. I mean, I'm fortunate sometimes because I live on the East Coast, but I might have a lot of work on the West Coast or even international. So I don't have to start until maybe 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning. So I can go out in the morning and get my runs in before, it's 7:30 a.m. before I have to kind of dive into work and all that stuff. So yeah, running is, in many ways, has just been such a great, it's been a great way for me to find balance. Plus, and over the past, 6 years. I mean, I lost some weight before then, but since my heaviest weight back in like 2017, I'm down 50 pounds. So
Wow.
I'm actually back to a weight that I was when I was a runner in college, which is just insane to think about. But I feel incredibly healthy, and that's part of my point. Like, you know, it, it's a weird thing when you are then the age of a parent, when one of your parents died.
Yeah.
And it's a weird thing that kind of goes through your head, as far as, what am I doing to make my life very different and make sure that I'm as healthy as possible? My dad unfortunately had cancer. There was not much he could do about it, but it's still about making sure every day you wake up and you're doing something for yourself and for others. And that's what I wake up thinking about. It sounds corny probably, but I do. I think about, what's one thing I can do for my own mental health so I can move forward through the day and be healthy? And what are things that I can start doing make sure that I'm doing for other people, whether it's who's coming over for dinner tonight, or who I might meet, who's at the grocery store, and making sure that I'm kind to them. It's just, I don't know. I guess it's all of that stuff. That's a lot to unpack, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is, and it's great. I mean, it's wonder. There's a lot of content there for us to try to really dig into for 25 minutes. But I
They're
think
going to be like, we do not want to see this guy. He's a dork. Why would we want to go?
no, you're inspiring me. I mean, you look great. So the folks who are watching on
You.
YouTube, you can see clearly that Peter is in shape and clearly healthy. Aside from the fact that you got one of those massage guns, it looks like
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the
Well,
background.
this is because
So
I'm an old man. So I'm glad you said that because I don't want people to look and be like, what is that behind him? Yes, I do have a massage gun because I am an old man, but I'm an old man who knows now that I need to stretch and I need certain things to help me recover from long runs.
Oh man, that's awesome. You know, you mentioned you went to Hawaii for work, and they just happened to have a. Most people when they're away on work and they're like, oh, maybe I'll catch a movie or there's a ball game because the team's in town. I'll go to that. But not Peter DeWitt, man. You race
No.
half marathons. I think that's
Like, all
fantastic.
right, I'm gonna do a half marathon with 7,999 other people on a Sunday morning at 6 a.m. Why not?
Why not? Oh, that's wonderful. So, Peter, like, I want to get to something that you just kind of unpacked a little bit with like being in your own head. But before we do that, thinking about, I mean, you've clearly accomplished a lot aside from like your career and writing books and running and now being an accomplished smoker of brisket. We'll
Not yet.
find
We
out.
haven't had it yet.
Only
So we'll
time will
see.
tell. What's something that you are so proud to share because it brings you great pride of something that you've either done or a journey that you look back on and say, "Wow, that was really cool."
I mean, I think there are a couple of different ways of looking at that. I'm a kid that many people who have seen me probably know this already because I'm open and honest. But yeah, I'm the youngest five. I was retained when I was in fourth grade. My dad died when I was in fifth. My mom went back to get her GED when I was in sixth grade, and then I graduated fourth from last in my class from high school. I was 262 out of 266. I failed out of a couple of community colleges, but I had a coach at one of the community colleges that said, DeWitt, you're not going to be a professional runner. You've actually got to go into the Learning Assistance Center if you want to run with us. And that semester, I walked in with a 1.7 GPA and I walked out with a 3.86. And I went to nationals for cross country 2 year. And then, after that, I went on to get my bachelor's and two masters and the doctorate. So that in itself is something to be really proud of because there were people that didn't make me feel like that was an option that I was going to have. So it's always important for me, whoever I'm meeting and whoever I'm teaching, there are people in there who's going to be able to reach that potential because of words that I've been able to give to them. And that coach I still talk to this day. Actually, I talk to all my coaches to this day. I think the other part of what you said when you asked about what I'm proud of, what I am actually very proud of are the relationships that I have. And that I don't mean that to sound corny, but I surround myself with really good people. I have a great family that, we've been through hard times, but we, there's definitely a lot of love, including, losing my mom and sister. They were instrumental, and I lost them 4 months apart, but they were instrumental in who I became as an adult, and they were always there to support me. So to this day, not only am I thankful for them and grateful for all that, but I'm grateful for just my nephews and nieces and my partner and my family in general around me, but also my friends and the relationships that I've created through the work space that I engage in. I don't do this alone. I think people might see my name on a book or they see me running a workshop. But for me, it's been about who I get to collaborate with and who those people are that I've built really high quality relationships with that I can consider my friends and the ones that will tell me if they think I'm messing up or if they think I'm going down the wrong path. So I think even though they seem like they're two different things, they're actually very much partnered together.
Yeah, I definitely could make the connection and like for you, how deeply important having a relationship is. I mean, just hearing the story, brief story of how your coach put you in a position to be inspired to go from 262 out of 266 to being a multiple book author. Like, I think that that's pretty cool. Being the guy who walks around with like at least 3 books in his head, and I don't know if I'll ever sit down to write them.
You
To,
will.
to be on a call with you to talk about those things, just so inspiring. I mean, there's a lot that I can relate to your story, and I know that there are a lot of educators who make a huge difference in the lives of children every single day who can relate to that story as well. It wasn't so much that they were drawn to like graphing parabolas is what set me on my path,
Right,
or
right.
learning about dangling participles. Like, it's a person who cared enough to like make that difference and really drag me along. So thank you for sharing that. It's
Oh,
definitely
thanks.
inspirational, and we can definitely connect to that. When you were talking about running and running without music, first of all, I don't know how you do that, especially on a treadmill, but you liked being in your own headspace. So I'm curious, what are you thinking about right now in this moment?
Am I an oversharer? That's like the first thing that comes to mind. No, what am I thinking about? So one of the things that and it relates to, what you and I are going to be doing together in a few months. I'm actually honestly thinking a lot about professional learning. And I'm being very serious because over the past few years, like if you're facilitating workshops, or I'm the lead advisor for the state of Washington, I work with, the Washington Association of School Administrators, and there are a few people I work with. My friend Jenny Donahue does a lot of work in collective efficacy. Mike Nelson, he's the assistant director. Chris Beals, who's the project director, and then this guy Tom Murphy, who's an outside evaluator. We actually run monthly professional learning. It's a hybrid approach for leaders from across the state of Washington, and I'm moving into a space where I'm going to be working with their next level leader program that they do with the Association of Washington School Principals. But besides that, like if you're not paying attention when you're facilitating or you're working with others, you're really missing out. 70% of my work is coaching. And then the others, a lot of it mostly is just those monthly relationships with organizations where I might be providing professional learning for school teams. And in the past couple of years, some amazing things have happened, Chris, where like I walked up to a group in Arkansas to say, hey, good morning, I'm Peter. Looking forward to working with you for 6 days over 3 months, where you're going to be collecting evidence and all this stuff on instructional leadership teams. And I said, so why are you here? And they said, we have no idea.
Mm.
And I went, what do you mean you have no idea? Like, it wasn't a judgy, what do you mean? It was just, what do you mean you don't have any idea? Are you the instructional leadership team? They said, no, our school has one of those. And I said, okay, so what team are you? I mean, you're here together. And they said, well, our principal just told us we're the empowerment team. And I said, cool. What does that mean? And they said, we have no idea. And I went back to my computer and I added a slide that said, do you know why you're in the room? It really did. Because I thought, I'm going to be with you for 2 days. And if you don't know why you're here in the first place, like, I need to let you talk about this. So what can I do to help? What I have come to learn is that happens more times than you could ever imagine.
Yeah.
That people are coming to a workshop or they go to a conference and they don't know why they're there. And I send out letters ahead of time. People, in Virginia will get it from me as well for the keynote and the breakout. And the letter is just welcoming them. And then I'll say what my success criteria is for the presentation. And then I'll say, I'm really hoping you're going to consider your own success criteria, because I use Mentimeter during every presentation, including keynotes, to ask people, what do you want to learn while you're with me? And I try to tie in what they say to what I'm presenting on. I'm trying to find different ways to get people to think metacognitively before they even come into a presentation, to think about why they're there. I'm coaching a school district, people from a school district in California, and they're working on a literacy rate, which is pretty low. And I remember talking to a couple of their teachers on special assignment as ELA specialists, and I asked them, why are you going to an RTI conference in 5 days? And they said, because the district told us we had to. Now you've got a low percentage rate when it comes to literacy, and you're going to an RTI conference, but you haven't had the opportunity or taken the opportunity to think about why you're actually going to that conference. And, from a school district standpoint, you might spend tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars over years on sending people to conferences and to workshops, but they don't know why they're going in and they haven't made a connection to what they're supposed to learn. That to me is something that needs to change. And it's not just teachers need to do this differently, principals need to do this differently. No, it's me too. As the facilitator, I need to understand. I mean, I do intake forms now with groups, like talk to me about what your needs are. I have a collaborative inquiry placemat that people will use to talk about what are your three, main priorities and stuff. So what's on my mind is how do I become even more intentional in the work that I'm doing so that when people come to see me, they're not left guessing why they're there. Like that's a problem, right?
Yeah.
That people are kind of sitting there. And do they all get the letter? No. Even a couple of weeks ago, I was somewhere in the Midwest and I said, when I sent out the letter with the success criteria, and I saw people just go, and I said, oh, you didn't get the letter. So does it happen all the time? No, somebody won't send on the letter, but I am going to make sure that on my side, I'm 100% responsible for my 50%. I'm going to send you what you need to know why you're in that room. And then you are going to do some of the work to make that connection as well. And we're going to meet. So that's what's on my mind. How can I be more intentional? And that's why I'm, reading that book on unreasonable hospitality, because it's kind of like, what are different ways that I can make sure that when they show up, not only do they understand the learning, but they just feel comfortable being there? Because we know from self-efficacy research that if you feel anxious, it's going to diminish your self-efficacy. But if you feel engaged and excited, it's going to increase your level of self-efficacy. So those are the things. Kind of a lot, huh?
Yeah, no,
That's why I run 10 miles.
No, what I appreciate is how, first of all, how reflective you are of your practice. You know what I mean? Like I'm Peter DeWitt. I've arrived. I have what I have. Here's my shtick. I'm going to keep it moving. Whether or not folks are successful is not my problem. You know what I mean? Like that could easily be somebody who you become. But you, like, I appreciate that you are embodying what it means to be a lifelong learner, what it means to be a reflective educator, and what it means to be able to find the resources you need. I mean, the book, of course, I wrote it down. If Peter DeWitt is reading Unreasonable Hospitality, you best believe I'm going to get it on Amazon. So
I don't get a kickback either, just saying.
But I think that's such a powerful, even though your topic might not be the same topic that others are thinking about in this moment, just the metacognition, the reflection, the how are things going, and what have I noticed, and how can I counter for that? I don't know if you've always done Mentimeter. I don't know if you've always asked the question, why are you here? And if you haven't, then it's just a very clear connection between what used to be and what is now because of a moment. So I appreciate that in general. Aside from the fact that you're thinking about the same things that I'm thinking about, obviously one of my roles is to high quality professional learning throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. And so the fact that you're making that connection between why I'm here and what will be as a result of this session, I think that's just so powerful, because that's exactly what we want our teachers to think about for our kids.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. It would be hypocritical of me to show up and say, well, I taught it, so it's up to you to learn it. And I think we do have to meet in the middle. Like you do have a responsibility when you're coming to professional learning to understand, what are my needs? How is this going to connect? But equally as important is what I'm doing to make sure that I do that. Mentimeter was a tool that they contacted me because of my blog with Ed Week. They contacted me the year before COVID. And I tried it a couple of times, and I remember thinking, who does webinars though? I don't do that many webinars. So I stopped using it. And then, COVID hit, and then I thought, oh, look at that. I'm doing 100 webinars a day. So I brought back in Mentimeter, and I would share my success criteria, and I would use it as an engagement, like, just ask those polling questions and that kind of stuff. And then I thought, why am I not asking them what they want when they come in? like I used to ask people to put on post-it notes, what's your goal for being here? But I wanted to change it. And so over the time that I was doing that, it allowed me, and it's anonymous. And I don't get a kickback by Mentimeter either, but it's anonymous. And what I like is that if you were sitting in front of a crowd and you ask people, raise your hand if you've got something to say, raise your hand if you've got a question, raise your hand if you want to share your success criteria. Very rarely will people raise their hand. But if you ask them to do it anonymous by just using a QR code on their phone, you'll get pretty close to 100% of the population actually engaging with you. So over that time, it's just like anything. I started looking, saying, so how can I do this differently? And when I started doing more of that monthly hybrid work, especially with the state of Washington, I would sit down with Mike and Chris and Jenny and Tom and say, so when I'm using Mentimeter this time, I'm going to be asking them for the success criteria, but then it's wrapped around their theory of action. It's wrapped around their strategic plan. And I found that the success criteria started to get deeper and deeper and deeper. And the challenge, especially when you've got a larger crowd, is to make sure you're reading through and looking at how are you tying that in to the content, so you're making those connections for people too. I think that's really important. But yeah, I'm always I think I've always been reflective in my practice, but it's also just, to me, it matters. It's not enough to just show up. And when you say things like I've arrived, I made it, I'm Peter DeWitt, those are words that never really come through my head. Even on a 10-mile run, the last thing I'm thinking is I've arrived, I'm Peter. And honestly, that is part of the issue that I've seen over the years in the professional learning world with people who write books. I think there have been times over the years that your ego feeds into the fact that you've written a book. And if your ego feeds into the fact that you've written a book and you become an edgy celebrity in your own mind, I think you've just lost touch with why you got into education in the first place.
Wow.
So I always want people to call me Peter. I always want people to tell me, what are your needs? What's the feedback you've got? What am I not giving you? Because if I'm not meeting your needs, do I need to say it in a different way? Or how can I help you? Because I was always a big fan of servant leadership from Robert Greenleaf. And I am a huge proponent of servant leadership. I am, as a facilitator or a coach or whatever I'm doing, I am here to serve you. And you tell me what it is you need from me, and I'm going to help you try to figure out what that looks like.
Yeah. And I can attest to that already. Just our relationship. Number one, you're obviously so approachable and so personable, and very responsive. And as we started our journey together with you and VASCD as a partnership to be a Keynote, you've asked me more than once, okay, what is it that you're looking for? What do you want? And specifically, so I can attest that you're not just saying some ththings to say some things. You really mean it. So Peter, I promised you about 25 to 30 minutes, and we're already there. So I just thank you so much for the time. Thank you again. I know you said it was some mutual admiration society going on with the thank yous, and it's true. We're just so, I mean, you could have said no. You could have said no. I'm busy. Virginia, you guys do your own thing, but you said yes, and we're excited to have you in November as our opening keynote for our annual conference, Learning Reimagined. For those of you who haven't registered yet, make sure you go to our website to register. Peter, any parting shots from you before we hit stop on the record button?
No, I'm really grateful that you asked me, and I'm excited to meet everybody. It's going to be nice to get back to Virginia. I want to be able to connect with as many people as possible. So I'm very much looking forward to being at the in-person event. It's going to be great.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thanks, Chris.